Hi everyone, it's Ali here. Welcome to another video. Something you might not know about me is that I absolutely love reading books. Not only do I find it good fun and quite relaxing, but also I find it's one of the best ways to invest in yourself. If you get just one good point out of a book, it can easily make it worth the money you paid for it. So bearing that in mind, I want to do a review of this book called The Art of Songwriting. I was sent this by author Ed Bell at the end of last year, and I finally got around to reading it while I was on holiday in January, and I found it pretty helpful. So I'm going to do a comprehensive review of this book and tell you why it might be something you need to check out. So my first impressions of this book are positive. I definitely feel it was worthwhile reading. It was a very quick read. Now, I don't mean that in a bad way, like there wasn't much there. I simply mean that because it was enjoyable, I managed to get through it quite quickly. Often if books are not that interesting, I get kind of halfway through them and then just never ever finish them. This book wasn't like that. Particularly the first few chapters were very good. I found those so helpful, really what I needed to read at this moment in time. The second half of the book was a lot to do with songcraft, how do you actually write your song? And although that was helpful, I felt like I had read some of that information already in other books, so it maybe wasn't so helpful for me at this stage. But the whole book in general was definitely worth a read. I went away feeling inspired and encouraged, and in that sense it was definitely worth getting. So what's this book all about? As the tagline says, this book is how to create, think and live like a songwriter. Now that's important in the sense that a lot of songwriting books don't actually focus on anything other than the craft of songwriting. They don't necessarily talk about the mental side of it, the mindset of being a songwriter. Ed definitely goes farther than just focusing on the craft of songwriting, with chapters focusing on the way you think as a songwriter, to chapters on song design and the writing process, to chapters on songcraft. The Art of Songwriting covers a lot of ground. So what are some of the pros and cons of the book? Starting with the cons, I felt like the pace of the book slowed down in the second half. That was probably a lot to do with just the more detailed information needed to explain the craft of songwriting. But I did feel that that made the book a bit harder to read in the second half than the first half. Not sure, as I say, there's much Ed could really have done about that. You have to explain the detail in the craft of songwriting. But perhaps if he could have done that, would have made the book a bit better. That brings me on to the second point, which is I think a lot of the craft of the songwriting that he talks about in the second half of the book, I'd really already read in other books. That's not anything negative about the book itself, because had I not ever read any other songwriting books, I would have found it really helpful. It certainly had all the information there you really need to get started writing a song. But I just kind of covered that already in other books, having read stuff by Pat Patterson and some other books out there that I'd already really come across a lot of that information. So as a result of that, I didn't find too many new insights on the craft of songwriting in this book. And the last con is simply that as a result, I don't think I would really reread this book again. I might reread the first few chapters. I found those, as I said, extremely helpful, and I might go back to those again every now and again to remind myself of the kind of mindset of songwriting, which for me is something I struggle with. But I don't think on the craft of songwriting that I would necessarily go back to this book for help on that. I think there are other books that I found a lot more helpful and a lot more detailed. Now, that's nothing again necessarily wrong with Ed's book. I think that particularly if you're a beginner, if you go too much into detail at the beginning, you'll probably just get swamped. So I'd recommend this particularly if you're a beginner, but for me that just meant that it's maybe not got so much longevity. I probably wouldn't go back to it to reread. So now moving on to the pros. I feel that this book's extremely accessible. It's done a very good job of not bogging you down with too much detail and information at the beginning. I found there's a lot of songwriting books out there, particularly that focus on the lyrics, where actually I felt like I almost needed a degree in English language just to be able to get started as a lyricist. And that's something Ed manages to avoid extremely well. I found it very helpful to not have to worry about all the kind of understanding of English language to be able to get started. And that's something that as a beginner I would highly recommend, that you get a book like this rather than one of the ones that goes too in depth too quickly. Secondly, the book focuses on mindset as much as it focuses on the practical side of songwriting. A lot of books that are on songwriting just focus on the practical side, the actual crafting of your song. But Ed focuses a lot on the mindset, the need to actually go out and live life to be able to write songs from your experience. I think this is really key and important for us as songwriters. Lastly, I think Ed's done a really good job of actually focusing on the need for people to go out and actually apply what they've learned. A lot of books kind of make it sound like you just go through, read their book and suddenly you'll be able to write a great song, but Ed focuses on the fact that you need to constantly apply this stuff, and that actually songwriting is a journey. It takes quite a long time to get to a point where you're actually writing songs that are really good, and that the only way to get there is to really keep writing over and over and over again. And I think that's really important. He does a really good job of emphasising that all throughout the book. At the end of each chapter there's often a little thing you can go and work on to help you improve, and he suggests that people spend time actually coming up with their own ways of applying this as well. So I think that's really helpful and something that I think is really emphasised well in this book. So what did I personally get out of this book? As I've already said, the first 3 chapters were the most important for me. What it means to be an artist, the songwriting journey, all that kind of stuff, the mindset kind of thing was really helpful for me, and I really needed it at this moment in time. I kind of got a bit bogged down in expecting myself to have written really great songs already and not appreciating the steps I was already making. So I think that was really helpful for me, really timely. If you're the kind of writer that struggles with those things, I think it'd be very helpful for you too. So in terms of who this book's for, I think if you're a beginner or intermediate, it's be very helpful for you. If you're a more advanced writer, or a kind of more experienced intermediate writer, say you've written over 100 or 200 songs, I think this book's probably going to be a bit too basic for you. You might still be able to get some stuff out of it, so it's not completely something you should ignore. But I think for the most part, it's for the beginner and kind of early intermediate stages of writing. It's particularly good at cutting through all the unnecessary stuff. I think it's very good and very accessible if you just want to get to all the basics you need as quickly as possible. Like I said, a lot of other songwriting books include a lot of stuff that you don't really need in the beginning, and I think this is where this book really shines, and particularly the way it focuses on the mental side of songwriting. So I'd highly recommend you check it out. In summary, I think it's one of those books that for the intermediate and beginner, where it's very accessible, very quick to read. It's the kind of book you can read over a weekend and be a better songwriter come Monday morning. So I'd highly recommend you check it out. You can see the link below, that'll take you to where you can purchase it if you'd like to do that. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you've liked it, please hit the thumbs up. If you've got someone that you think might enjoy this book, please share it with them. And if you'd like to see more of this content, please hit the subscribe button. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next video.